Welcome, listeners, to this week's episode of Unexplained Legends. I'm Roger O'Sullivan, and with me, as always, is
Denis Land. Sorry, I'm all out.
Yay! And together we are the Unexplained Legends. You're quick off the mark today, Dennis.
I don't know why that catches me off guard every week. I'm kind of sad that I ever thought of doing it. But Raj, how's your week going? Seems a little warm over in your house.
Yeah, so well, I know what you're alluding to. You think you're so sly, right? But I'll tell you. I'll actually tell you something that will really piss you off.
Okay.
Just before. So the bad news that Dennis has trailed is that I bought a mini freezer because I don't have a freezer in my house, and it was driving me up the wall. So I bought I nearly said a Russell Howard freezer, but what is it? What's the Russell Hobb?
Yeah, we're both firing pretty quick today, aren't we?
Yeah. I bought one of them, right? And it's not working. Okay. Turned it on, did everything you're supposed to do. It was working. It is not now working. Or at least it was making noise. I can't say it was working.
But it's new, so there's nothing in it, so you're fine.
Well, no, you see, this is the thing. Before I went off to work today, I flicked it on and it was all working and everything, and I thought, okay. And it said you have to leave it rest for 3 hours so the coolant settles.
It's tired from being delivered.
Yeah, it is. It's had a hard trip. I left it all night. Turned it on this morning, heard it like gurgling away and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, that is the sound of a working freezer.
Mm-hmm.
Go off to work. When I'm on the way home from work today, I call into Tesco, my favourite shop. Call in there and I go, I'm gonna stock up on all of the freezery goods that I haven't been able to enjoy while I've been sans freeze hour.
Give us some of the items you picked up. What's in a Roger freezer?
Well, obviously,
besides like human heads and hands and stuff.
Yeah, long time listeners will know immediately. Like alarm bells will have been going off when they just heard that I didn't have a freezer, because they'll be like, "But what about his Mr. Freeze addiction?" And that has really it's been tough. It's been tough without a freezer. But obviously, Mr. Freezes, they were the main thing I bought, which would have arguably been okay. But
how many are we talking about quantity-wise? How many Mr. Freezes did you buy?
Oh, I just because it's not a very big freezer, so I just bought 2 packs.
Yeah, the clue is in the name.
yeah. So I've just bought 2 packs, 2 packs of them, and which probably I think each of them contain maybe 18 or 20, so 40 of them. And
do you keep the mini freezer next to the bed?
Not yet. But maybe when I fix it, that's where it plans to go. About 40 of them. Bumper load of vegetarian mints.
Okay, nice.
Bumper load, and chips, of course. Frozen pizza.
Frozen pizza is great. What order would you eat those in then?
I would have eaten them all together. No, I would have eked them out over the course of months, I'd say. I also bought some ice cream, but the just standard cookies. What's it called? Cookie dough ice cream. But I put them all together. Couldn't wait to get home, and now put them in the freezer. And I thought, what a privileged life I lead, putting them in the freezer.
You've pretty much just bought a very expensive box.
Yeah, a box that is probably putting like what do they call those CFCs? It's currently just putting CFCs into my food, and I might as well put them in a giant thermos. That's what I should have done. But the thing that's going to drive you up the walls about them is to be fair, the mini freezer was free basically.
How is it free? And also, if it was free, how are you surprised that it doesn't work?
No, because it is new. It is new. But here's what happened, right? I
broke into an old person's house.
Yeah. When I moved to my current location, I'm losing all sorts of the camera's going out of focus here. When I moved into my current location, I had to sign up for a new internet provider. And part of the signing up bonus was I got a £75 voucher, right? For Amazon, which I don't like using, but if I get a free voucher, I'll use it, okay? Got that. Thought brilliant. They accidentally gave me a £50 one. which pissed me off no end. That's why I didn't get a freezer earlier. I was trying to get that sorted. So I was emailing
Jesus Christ.
What?
You didn't get a freezer earlier because of the £25 difference.
Yeah.
When you could have, you could have just put another £25 and balanced it around in another way.
Well, no, because it's the principle of the matter, right?
What's the principle? That you don't get a freezer?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I sent them an email. I said, listen, there's no way I'm getting a freezer until you send me the £25. I don't hear back from them. Blah blah blah. I eventually just cave, and I use the £50, and I do what you suggested, and I pay the other £25. The day I do that, I get an email into my old email inbox and go, oh, very sorry to hear about that. We've fixed the voucher. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, surely a £25 voucher. No, Denis. A £75 voucher.
£75 stolen illegal voucher is what you're saying?
No, £50 stolen illegal voucher.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
I was owed to me. So I'm up £50.
What was the customer service person you were talking to? What's their full name?
Oh, they're no longer there.
Okay.
Because
all right.
I complained about their negligence, and I got another voucher.
Because it was them, wasn't it? All right, what are we doing this week?
This week, Dennis, we're doing again another episode ripped from the headlines. Absolutely ripped from the headlines. I'm sure everyone will have been expecting it. We're doing, Dennis, we're of course doing a special on the US congressional hearing about
I had a feeling.
UFOs. Yeah.
So when did this happen? When did this happen? This is recent.
Happened only during the week, Wednesday, Dennis.
What do you think is the initial reaction from people about?
Okay, so another podcast I listened to, that UFO podcast. Before this happened, they said that they reckoned their audience would probably be 50% positive, 50% negative. And they did a poll online, very scientific, and I think it got 89% happy with the hearing, and 5% unhappy, 6% undecided.
Well,
so that tells you everything you need to know.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Okay.
Go on.
I actually watched a little bit of the hearing, so I'm not completely in the dark.
I don't like that.
Why?
I don't like the sound of that because you're going to pull me up on my notes now.
Well, I can't be on the ground like when an alien lands in Brazil, but I think I can at least turn on an all stream. To be honest, most of the stream I saw was just them during a break, where it was still rolling for some reason and people were just chattering and moseying about. But I'm excited to learn about the aliens and them existing, and I think you should bring us through it.
Well, in that case then, Dennis, on the back of that, we'll crack on with the lamestream narrative. For years, people in the UFO community have been Sorry, actually, just forget that, because I must adjust my screen.
Forget it, we're not doing it anymore.
No, forget that. No, because I couldn't see you, and it was really off-putting to just be talking to a Word document. For years, people in the UFO community have been clamoring. Sorry, I fucked it up again. For years, people in the UFO community have been clambering. Is that the word? Clamoring?
Is it clamoring? But to be honest, I could be using it incorrectly anyway. Okay.
They've been clamoring for something which they describe as disclosure. Disclosure, in short, is the act of the admittance and acceptance by government bodies that they in fact are aware of the UFO phenomenon and potentially even have evidence of it. However, despite this dream among UFO researchers, it was not believed that it would ever truly occur. That was until, on the 26th of July 2023, when the world took a step in the right direction. When 3 expert witnesses appeared in front of the House Oversight Committee's National Security Subcommittee to discuss the potential of a UFO cover-up.
Can I just jump in here, right? Just to give people who are listening to this a little bit of summation of what's been happening so far, right? Because we did an episode on David Grush, who's one of the guys who appeared at the hearing, and who's, to be honest, probably the most interesting guy out of the three in terms of what he claims to know. But what has happened up until now that all these alien events are happening? All right, like that it's actually in.
Well, I don't know if I agree with your first statement there about David Grush being the most interesting. Because the
Why?
two
Who do you
other
think
lads,
is the most interesting? So
oh no, I do think he is, but I think there's an argument. I can see somebody thinking one of the other lads is more interesting, because the other lads have seen UFOs.
Yeah, but hasn't David Grush, like, allegedly, because he's a very careful man when he talks, so I don't want him to send lawyers towards me, but hasn't he basically said, like, he has worked on projects where they have seen alien aircraft or alien craft?
I don't think he's
like
ever...
he's saying that they have crafts there, so like he hasn't seen a UFO because he's...
No, but I think we'll get into this as we go along, but I think the other two lads claim to have more first-hand experience, where they actually saw they're basically like,
oh yeah, like, I mean,
along,
there's
they're right next to them, you know, waving away.
I think unfortunately we're having some internet problems.
Oh shit!
At the moment, don't worry about it like this being a clean edit, because it just won't be. But it'd be better to just get it sorted. I don't think I have anything extra running anywhere.
Yeah.
Do.
Oh, 1 second.
Can I do anything here?
Is it better now? No. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can just test it there. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I think you were hearing me a little bit off, like as in it was taking a little while to come through.
How is it now?
Advanced. That sounds okay, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
your screen is becoming a little bit clearer.
Right. There's still a bit of a delay, I'm sure, but we'll just work through it. So will we just continue from?
We'll go from David Grush.
Well,
most interesting.
What we'll do is we'll just edit some, and we'll just say like we were being silenced. We're being silenced, Dennis, because we had internet problems there.
We did get a lot of interference in there, and lo and behold, now that we've stopped talking about that stuff in that direction, what's after happening? The internet is fine. It actually is spookily fine.
Yeah, well, they're trying to silence us. They couldn't silence the hearings, but they're trying to silence us. The where they can.
These two lads from Ireland living in London talking about aliens.
Yeah, because they were like, we bring an air of authenticity to this.
Well, it's funny you say that, right? Because I think you've poached that off that naval commander. But we were talking about who's the most interesting, right? I think David Grush probably has the most interesting things that we haven't heard yet.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
And then you have the naval commander. I think he was pilot or involved for at least 18
David
years.
Fravor. Yeah,
so he's involved for 18 years. And his whole thing is that he's like, well, I'm actually going to be the one that's going to lend loads of credibility to this, because they're not going to be able to knock me because I'm like a decorated guy. And then the other person I don't know too much about. Who's the other person?
Ryan Graves.
Okay, and what's his story?
He's Air Force pilot, I believe.
All right,
and what's the story with that? I think that's a full admittance that boats are shit. Because the Navy have all these like planes and stuff.
Yeah,
but they're the fucking Navy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your point here? Are you trying to pick on the Navy?
No, but what I'm saying is like the Navy is like, oh yeah, oh by the way, we have planes. Yeah, what's that about? The Air Force.
I'm sorry.
What?
Am I doing a podcast with Jerry Seinfeld? And what the fuck is happening?
No, but the Air Force don't have boats. Yeah. The Air Force don't bother with boats, do they?
No, they couldn't be arsed with them.
Yeah, which I think proves the point that planes are better than boats.
As I've always said, boats and planes are just boats of the sky. That's just the way it is.
That's true. I agree. I've long agreed with that. Listen, right? We won't get on that topic, but that's a bugbear of mine is the Navy having planes. I don't think they should be allowed that.
All right,
that's my opinion.
Back to the podcast. So we have got these three guys, right, and they've come forward at different times, and now they're coming together to basically just put into a record. I think isn't that the reason for it? Like we've heard them talk about all these things before, but now they're just putting it on record.
Yeah, I think you actually have an interesting. They're an interesting trio.
Mm.
They're an interesting trio, right? Because they're kind of like, what are those lads called? The Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Right? They're kind of like that, where they all have their own individual kind of personality.
Yeah, no, they really do.
With the way they interact with it. Because David Fravor, he's basically like a rock star in this world. Joe, he's unflappable. Like he doesn't give a shit. Ryan Graves comes across as a man who's been like put through the ringer for this.
Yeah, I know he does. He's a bit nervous or something as well.
Yeah, and then David Grush is like a person. He's like the Fox Mulder of the crew.
I'll tell you something, right? You couldn't get a bet on this at the moment that David Grush is in fact an alien.
Why?
Right, he does have the demeanor sometimes of someone from outer space. Like, as in he can be so clinical, and just the way he talks sometimes, I'm like, I don't know, we should get a blood test on you, maybe.
Do you think he's gone like, what do they call it, going native? He's been deep undercover.
Yeah,
and he's flipped.
But he also doesn't even realize that he's an alien. I think that what would be the perfect thing for all of this is towards the end they say, look, we haven't really found anything, and then David Crush goes, haven't we? And stands up and then takes off a mask.
Oh yeah, takes off. I'd love that reverse Phoenix Lights thing.
But just up until this point, right? So we have all these three guys. What kind of led to them speaking out? Like, do you know the kind of timeline of the government saying, all right, let's get these guys together in a room?
Well, it kind of just, to me, based on my research, it's kind of the David Grush coming out in April and announcing this as a whistleblower, and then them putting together this this oversight committee, and them bringing on David Fravor and Ryan Graves. I don't really know how they got involved in the process of being witnesses. Maybe they volunteered themselves, or maybe they reached out to them.
Yeah.
But I guess they are the three most high-profile people who claim to have had experience with these vehicles or with these beings within the U.S. framework.
We'll get to it, I'm sure, in the narrative in a minute. But the guy Fravor, he was describing the spaceship in the hearings. I thought this was very interesting.
Yeah,
and he said that it's in the shape of a Tic Tac. Is what they were using. Yeah. And then
we've covered on another episode.
We have, so it's easily imaginable. But then the guy, like some senator or whatever, who was questioning him, said it was a TikTok.
Yeah. I remember this. You said it's in the shape of a TikTok. The guy. Are you going to say this? What he said next?
Yeah. Did he correct it? Like he made it easier for him. Is that what he's saying?
Oh, like, no. Another guy. This is what's even funnier. Is earlier in the hearings, one of the other guys, I can't remember. Is it Burchett?
Mm-hmm.
When he was saying, he said, "This vehicle's in the shape of a Tic Tac. I don't want any young people getting confused with TikTok. It's a Tic Tac. It's a mint." And not the Chinese app, or not the Chinese communist app, TikTok.
But what your man said was he was like the senator misspoke and said TikTok, and then the other guy said, all right, Fravor was like, well, this guy obviously doesn't know what a Tic Tac is, and he definitely doesn't know what a fucking TikTok is. And so then he goes, oh, for anyone, trying to imagine or whatever, just imagine a giant propane tank.
Yes, yeah.
Which I thought was so hilarious, because I was like, yes, like that's exactly what this guy needs to imagine it. It's a propane tank.
Yes,
you can just feel the penny drop. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, a flying propane tank. Now I'm on board. So to continue with the narrative, Dennis, the individuals present at this committee were pilots David Fravor and Ryan Graves, as we mentioned, both having experienced close encounters with UAPs during their time working in the military. And the headline witness who instigated the hearing to begin with was ex-military intelligence official turned whistleblower, one David Grush. Over the course of multiple hours, the three individuals were grilled relentlessly about their knowledge of the topic and their belief in the potential for a deep state UFO cover-up. Some of their claims are unbelievably chilling, to say the least.
I think as well, just to point out for people to get an idea of this, and we kind of talked about the personalities, right? I will say, just to lend some sort of credibility to this whole thing, right? That Fravor fellow, right, regardless of what he did in any of the wars he was involved in, I'm not privy to know. He does seem like a pretty normal guy. Like as in a...
yeah.
Like there's nothing like spooky about him or anything like that. Like this just seems like a normal guy and quite just anyone you see in the street. And then for Grush, I definitely feel like Grush, if he ever comes around and says like, I'm sorry, I was actually mistaken, I didn't see anything, something awful has happened to him that maybe some government have inflicted on him, because he seems like a guy who would be a nightmare for someone trying to cover up stuff. Like he seems like he is going to absolutely go to the ends of the earth in a very practical, assertive way to get the truth out.
Well, something that I have been thinking about. We'll get to this in the theories later, but obviously people talk about the idea of them being plants or whatever. If or like it's some kind of elaborate galaxy brain misinformation program. If it is that, I say touche.
Yeah.
Because the three of them have all come out at different times. Don't really they have no real ties to each other or anything like that, and they all are just such different people, like we mentioned.
Totally different.
So you've got all bases covered there.
I think the only thing that maybe could happen there, and we'll get into theories, is the fact that it could be so elaborate that like they've fed Grush this information, and like, they're walking past a warehouse and someone's closing the door and he sees a spaceship inside and they're like, what the hell is that? He's like, oh, nothing. So like I'm kind of joking in that, but I actually am also kind of being serious.
I think it's more believable that I agree with you on that, but I think it's more believable if you were going to say anyone was a plant. I think it's more believable to say one of the military, well, in particular David Fravor. I think if anyone's a plant, it's David Fravor, I think. Can I be sued for that?
I don't know. You're just saying he's a houseplant, so I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. But I don't think any of them are, for the record. But if they were, I think it would be him, because I think a military man, he'll go with orders, I guess.
Yeah, I guess to point out, if we do question their integrity and their motives, that probably is libelous. So this is all alleged, and this is parody. It's actually a parody podcast.
Yes, it is. It is a parody. Listen. I think they're all dead on. They're all dead on top blokes. Okay. Yeah. So don't you dare come at me. Grush's testimony was perhaps the most alarming out of any of them, as he alleges that the U.S. government has participated in a multi-decade cover-up and disinformation campaign with the aim of concealing the US's real program of reverse engineering downed UFOs. Furthermore, he claims that non-human biologics, that's the phrase he apparently used, had been recovered by the government, and they too had been experimented on in secret black site programs. He also goes on to say that he is aware of multiple colleagues who were physically injured by UAP during activities around the time that they were working on these projects. And most chilling of all, he even hinted at an individual he knew who had been threatened or potentially murdered for what they'd known about these secret programs.
He had a cool enough phrase, which I'll get completely wrong, but he basically said something along the lines of like, they were questioning him, oh, like what happened? Like, how did this person get injured or whatever? And he basically said, look, like, it's going to be dangerous when you're investigating the unknown of the unknown.
Whoa, I that missed. Like, yeah. I completely missed that.
which I thought was a chilling thing to say.
That should be the tagline for the podcast.
The unknown of the unknown.
Yeah, I think that should be the tagline. The unknown, explore the unknown. You see, we're unknown, like. Yeah,
we're exploring each other. I get it. But
open up.
I think he was kind of alluding to some of the injuries as well. Again, this is complete guesswork, but it did seem like they were getting injured from like interacting with the stuff.
Yeah, he kept talking about skiffs as well. I don't know if you're familiar with what a skiff is.
I'm actually not, and I heard it so many times.
Oh man, I looked it up, but it's completely gone out of my head. But it's an acronym. It's like security something. Hang on.
While you're looking that up as well.
Yeah.
It was. Well, you might be able to answer this as well, but and you also might bring this up. But he did say as well, like that he has a list of cooperative and hostile witnesses, which I thought was an interesting phrase to back up everything that he's saying. But the question I have for you is, he was talking about all of this stuff very vaguely. So he said the biologics, which I thought was a cool word. And he was questioned then, do you mean that these were human? And he said, I'm fairly sure he said no, right? But then with everything he would say, he would qualify it with saying, I'm not going to discuss this in a public setting, but I will discuss it in closed doors. But why is he doing it? Is it because it's classified information or something?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say with the skiffs. Skiff, I got sidetracked again. It means sensitive compartmented information facility. I thought, until I just Google imaged it, I had looked it up before, but until I Google imaged it, I thought it was like metaphorical.
Okay.
Dennis, you should look up a skiff right now.
SCIF.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh wow! Oh, this was in a movie. A sensitive compartmented information facility. United States military, national security, blah blah blah, is an enclosed area within a building that is used to process sensitive compartmented information, types of classified information.
Yeah. So it's completely it's completely sealed off, so no information can be leaked from it. But when he referenced the skiff, so there's two things about this, right? One of them is exactly like you said. Even though he's a whistleblower, there are certain things that if he says them, even when he's in the hearing, there are certain things that if he was to say them, he could potentially be, I guess, arrested. Because they're national security or whatever.
I got one here for you as well. I don't know how they pronounce this, but there is also a SAPF, an SAPF.
Oh, yeah. I'm less familiar with that, but I think that's I think that is more metaphorical. I don't think that there's the same. I could be wrong, but I don't think that has the same. That's like almost let's just have a important meeting. But the skiff thing, an interesting thing about that, and why this keeps the U.S. government so under wraps, is that the people that are asking these questions, and where he says I can only give you that answer in a skiff, they don't have clearance to be in skiffs.
Oh.
So there's a lot of debate as to whether, will they be given the clearance to go into a skiff to actually discuss this with them.
I was reading a book, and basically they had these things in it called skiffs, but it was it was hundreds, probably thousands of years in the future or something.
Yeah.
And they would travel, between galaxies or some shit, and then they'd have to jump in and have these private conversations. And I was like, oh, that's so cool that they do that. But, it makes total sense that they would have these things. I wonder, the security around them and who runs them and who checks them. And
so, this is a little side note before we carry on as well. I was listening to an interview with the Burchett guy, Tim Burchett. Don't want to discuss his politics.
Okay.
Right. Not going into that. Right. But I'm just specifically on UFOs. He mentioned something about skiff type facilities, or these. They have these. What do they call them? Secure briefings and stuff. And he said that there's often a tactic with stuff like this, where they'll bring you into a secure briefing to tell you information you're already aware of in a public context.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've then been retold it in a secure meeting, you cannot repeat it.
So it locks
in a
you
public
down into
location.
it.
Yeah, so people will be called into these meetings, these like high clearance meetings, specifically to talk about something that they've learned that morning, to lock them down. So
David Grush actually kind of said something about that as well. He said, I'm happy to have these conversations with these witnesses or whatever, as long as they're not affected by some NDA. So maybe that's the same thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that he wants to call on that are potentially might be subject to other such, let's say, what would you say, kind of handcuffed to information.
But before we move on, I just want to read this because I think people find this interesting, right? So I was just looking up skiffs and saps, and then I came across this thing. It's deadly.
You've gone completely off all. I should have never told you to look this up because you're never coming back.
It's so cool, right? It's on this website. It's completely legitimate, but I think it just goes into the minds and side of a world that we would never ever know about. But it's called "How Much Does It Cost to Build a Skiff or Sap?" Right, and it's a security company I'm not going to mention, right? And they're talking about the costs and everything, but like they said, to give you an idea of the potential cost of a skiff, if you're building a skiff less than 200 square feet, we'd recommend budgeting a minimum of $1,500 per square foot, etc., etc. Right? They're talking about this as if like anyone could make this, like as in, you know, I don't know, let's say some corporate kind of entity would have one.
That's pretty fucked up. Just thinking that they'll have those, but actually, what it made me think of when I thought about it a second longer, I bet it's military contractors for like the U.S. government. So if you successfully won a contract, like a military contract or a secure contract for the U.S. government, I bet they probably have like, oh, you need to have a skiff.
Okay.
You know, for certain things, but I'm sure they probably use it in corporate context as well. I'm sure there are some like really high level, you know, fucking bad companies out there that are like, we need a skiff.
They're probably unofficial skiffs as well that you're probably not even realising going into it. But anyway, whereabouts are we?
Okay, so while Fravor and Graves' testimony was not as inflammatory as Grush's claims, hearing the pilots discuss their encounters while under oath was fascinating, with both of them claiming to have interacted with crafts which simply could not be made by our current material sciences or knowledge. Graves, even more interestingly, stated that these events had been near daily at a certain point in his career, and that their prevalence was kept covert due to the severe stigma surrounding reporting such sightings. So a day on day, he said towards the end of his career he was seeing these.
With Fravor as well, I thought he brought up some really interesting stuff about them witnessing the stuff. Was like that they were coming back and just saying it to everyone. You know, like as in it wasn't like you know, it wasn't like you said, it was basically an everyday occurrence. But he seemed to be saying like, you know, I'm mixing that up. It was the other guy, what's his name? I've already forgotten his name. Graves. He actually said it, that he came out, the reason that he came forward, because they were asking him, why did you come forward? And his reason was that he didn't have the know-how or like the kind of backup to protect his pilots when they were going out flying, and he didn't know what to do with these things. So that's why he basically went forward and said, look, we need to figure out how to keep our pilots safe, which I think again is just it's a fairly credible reason to be doing this.
Yeah, I think if you ever listen to interviews with him, he has like such a nuts and bolts kind of approach to UFOs that it's there's this thing in the UFO community that they call woo. I don't know if it's an acronym or not, but basically it's like, woo is, you know, people who kind of think that UFOs, we should be communing with them in naked in fields and stuff. Like it's like the kind of spiritual side of what they are. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've nuts and bolts UFO guys. And Graves is definitely a nuts and bolts type guy. I think he has said in interviews outside of this hearing that he doesn't necessarily feel like they're a negative force, but that yeah, their capabilities are something to be wary of.
Yeah, because in both their testimonies, they were basically saying that like the acceleration and the movement of these craft was just nothing even close. And I think what was really interesting was, I can't remember if Grush was saying this on behalf of them or not, but it was one of them. But basically, they were you immediately, this is what I thought, and then they answered the question. I was kind of like, okay, like they're faster than what we currently have, but 50 years off or whatever. And they were basically saying, no, like it's so far off that they've got scientists involved to see what you would need to like accelerate that fast or have that capability, and it's just completely like not anywhere near us in terms of technology.
Did you really think they were 50 years off? Did you think that it's like?
I think 50 years is usually the marker for all alien stuff.
Oh, you think so? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all they just have whatever, like Blu-ray 2.5 or something.
Well, I think like if you go from like 1900 to 2000, like there's
not
a fairly
that much has changed. I agree.
Yeah, no,
I don't think so.
What, you think if you went back to 1900 and showed some lad an iPad, he'd be like, it's all right, it's no newspaper, like.
Yeah, it's basically just, I see, like, I get it.
He gets it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
You wouldn't be like brought into the street and shot for being some sort of evil spirit.
No, I think if you went back to the 1900s and you're like, listen here, look.
Not the 1900s, like we're not talking about the 80s or the 90s, like as in, I'm talking about 1900.
1900. Yeah. Well, no, you said 50 years. So if we go back 1950.
That's not back 50 years either. That's 1980.
Well, yeah. But you know what I mean. And if we go back then, okay, fine. Let's play your game. If you go back to the fucking 70s.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, look at this, and they go, oh, I get it. Like it's basically a small TV.
Do you have any idea how backward people were in the 70s? Everything was orange and brown and just depressing.
Listen, I'm telling you, I think so what if you take the planes from the 1970s, and compare them to now, like if you saw them back then,
don't even try and make that point. Just don't.
What do you mean?
That's so. Well, are you saying that with some of the stuff that we have now that people would not be completely shocked? In my initial point, not about the 70s to here.
They'd be. Listen, okay, I'll put it to you this way. If you traveled back in time, imagine this, right? Okay,
go on. I'm imagining.
Okay, if you traveled back to 1970s, you traveled like time travel. You time travel back, and you show them. I don't know. You show them a plane from now.
Okay.
This Boeing 737, or no? You show them like the stealth bomber or something.
That's a big move. I think you may have gone too big on this.
No, you show them stealth bomber, right? And you go, look at this, right? And they look at it, and they go, wow, Jesus, when's that from? And you go, 50 years in the future. I think they'd go, yeah, sounds about right. Okay?
On what bearing do you think that, like, as in their computers and stuff and like going to the moon were absolutely fucking huge?
Yeah. But I think that, well, that's the other thing I'd say to them is that I'd go, by the way, we can't go to the moon anymore for some reason. That's off the table. I don't know what, that's become lost technology or something.
Here, speaking of lost, we've become lost. So
No, there's a point to this. No,
okay.
I know you're trying to rein me back in, but there's a point to this, right? If somebody turned up now, time traveled to here, and showed us the fucking Tic Tac.
Yeah.
Like flying around, flaking around, right? And we went, Jesus Christ. And they're like, we're time travelers. And we go, yeah, wow, like, it doesn't surprise me. And they go, that piece of technology is from 50 years in the future. You'd go, what? 50? What happened in the intervening time? Like that's way more. You're talking, I would say, 300 years.
300 years, yeah. Which was, I think, just the initial point anyway, though, wasn't it?
What?
Like, is it? I was just saying that it was incredible, like that. But they're talking way, way further off than that anyway. But I just want to say, right, in 50 years, right, let's just put it on, right, we'll probably be dead, right? But in 50 years,
I won't be dead.
You definitely will be dead before me, right?
Are you joking me?
Your fucking freezer is full of Mr. Freezes and mints.
Yeah, listen, it strengthens you up. I'm a hardy man, okay?
You've got lupus.
You're dying first.
All right, wait, where we're going? Yeah, so 50 years in the future,
Yeah.
What do you think in the 70s? It'll actually be the 70s.
Yeah.
What do you think will be there that will be mind blowing? Like, how far do you think it will go? Because you're almost saying it's going to be stagnant.
I think the biggest change we'll have digital loyalty cards.
That's actually quite cool, yeah.
Right, I think that will be one. There'll be a big problem as well because people will hack those and there'll be a black market for them. But I think it will be that. I think laptops will have gotten bigger again. I think that will be like a trend. And
do you think they would have got very, very... We're still heading towards very, very small, and then they would kind of bounce back out from being small to big again?
Yeah, bounce back out. And apart from that, I think water bottles, they'll hardly ever leak. And, fleshlights will be in every house.
Yeah, they'll be like on the wall next to a brush or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They'll be what like phones were in up until like the 1990s. You'll just have a house flashlight. You'll have a few of them.
Are you thinking about that? Is this what you think, or is it a want?
So,
all right. No, we have gone completely off track.
Yeah, so finally, Denis, one of the most fascinating aspects of all of this was the supposed corroboration of so many stories and allegations which have been talked about for years in the UFO community, finally now being acknowledged by former government and military employees while under oath. While we may never truly know the full extent behind these stories, the magnitude of them being investigated at this level cannot be overstated. To this day, the UFO phenomenon and the US government's involvement remains unexplained.
All right, before we get into more of the nitty gritty on the theories and maybe some of the stuff they were saying, so I'm going to try and sum it up. We've got three guys there, right? We've got David Grush, who was working in the kind of intelligence field of the US government, yeah?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Basically. You've got another guy, Fravner, who was a decorated... Fravor, is it?
Yeah.
Favreau, right? He was
John Favreau.
Right. Okay, he's right in the Mandalorian there, right? He's been working there in very, very good positions, 18 years. Can't really find any fault with him, right, in terms of his military career. And then we've got Graves, who was a pilot, and also I think something to do with like training pilots and stuff like that. Yeah. And his reason for coming forward was he wanted to have pilots safe from this and have some sort of procedure against whatever these things are. The Fravor fella came out because he said that his friend was basically convincing him to do it, I think. And he said it like 5 or 6 times to him, basically, you have to come forward. And he was like, why me? And they're like, because you will be really credible. Like, you need to come forward because other people can be discredited. You can't. But, watch this space. And then Grush... he came forward because he is a lizard man and potentially an alien.
Well, that's your words.
Yeah.
Your words, not mine.
And just
that basically sums it up.
And just to keep going in it then, right, so we had this hearing, and the whole purpose of the hearing was just to lock in stuff. I mean, not in the way we were talking about earlier on, but just commit it to record some of the stuff that they were saying already in public settings. And the senators involved and stuff asked them fairly direct questions that was basically with the objective of just getting it in on record very clearly. And now, where do you think it'll go after this?
A lot of people are saying there'll be more hearings. There'll be more hearings.
For what purpose?
To get more information and to basically, I think, hone in even more on where they should be looking for these these beings.
It sounded like Grush as well, like committed to giving them a list of witnesses that they could contact and interview.
So I think that the other hearings won't necessarily just be these lads. I think there's probably other people for them to bring in. But I think definitely more hearings, and I think watch this space.
And another question as well. Do you know the senators that were asking the questions?
I know one of them very well.
Do you?
Yeah.
And I will say this, right? People are going to be fairly shocked by this, I think. But so it's they're Republicans and Democrats, right, reaching across the aisle,
bipartisan,
right, to discover the truth about aliens, right, which is great. But I have to say, right, that Republican senator, right, I think it was a Republican senator. I'm fairly sure it was, right. some of the stuff he was coming out with was like, I can see why people vote for him. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, he was coming out saying like, hey, we just get off our horses and we're just good old guys. And
you must be talking about Tim Burchett. Is that the guy who dedicated it to his wife on their anniversary and stuff like that? Listen,
like, as in, right? I'm just going to say, right? I am sure he.
Do not look at his Wikipedia
allegedly
page.
Is an abhorrent person, right? Abhorrent. But I just want to point this out that like that other side are just missing a beat when it comes to knowing how to work cameras and like work audiences and just like get votes just basically on a personality.
What do you think his background is? Like, what do you think his job is outside
oil?
No, they think more like
cattle.
You were closer.
Agriculture.
Not quite. I believe he made his money in truck hire.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think he owns loads of trucks. So he's very, very like man of the people type. But then also
the worst person ever.
Abhorrent people. So Dennis, we'll crack on with the theories, okay? It might surprise you, but I actually don't have that many theories today, because I think there's really only three options. There's like three options, with some of them with a few branches, right?
But before you begin as well, I think it's important to point out as well that like if we saw all the hearings together, we would have this really condensed episode. But I think these are actually kind of cool episodes where we are just finding out what's happening and almost digesting it as they're coming out.
Oh yeah, like it only happened 2 days ago. When we were recording this, like to be honest, I think a common meme I've seen online is like people talking about, I don't know if you've seen this, but it's the meme of the kind of deadbeat burnt out guy, and it's like a UFO opposite him, or an alien. He goes, hey, we're real, and then it's like, I thought you would have had more of a reaction. He goes, I'm going through a lot of shit right now, so don't really have time for this. But I think that's common. Like I know lots of people who are interested in it, but they're not keeping up on it. And also, I'll say this: I don't think it's being covered that much.
No, it's not really. I mean, imagine if this even came out 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I think it's just because people's lives are so unbelievably mangled.
Yeah.
So like people are just
my freezer isn't working.
It's true.
Like
true.
I can barely focus on this.
But you are 50 pounds up, so.
That's true. And listen, I'll be honest with you, it does look nice. So they will so at least that the theory is, Dennis, number one theory is it's all real and the lads are just like full on, totally all good. Everything they said is correct. And the US government has been doing this elaborate cover up for years.
Do you know what's going to be troubling though, right? They're going to have to be very careful with the witnesses they get, because they're going to have really solid witnesses that can't be turned to discredit. So like right now we have 3 fairly solid guys. Yeah. I think going from a total guesswork from like Grush, most solid, he's like concrete, and then you've got our boy Frave, right?
Yeah.
And then we go down to the last guy, and I think like they're gonna, whoever they bring forward is gonna make or break things.
I wouldn't say necessarily in terms of reliability. I would talk about it in terms of commitment. So I think Grush is like high commitment. Fravor, I think, could take or leave talking about this. I think he's kind of sick of it, and I think as well he's said everything he has to say on the topic. I
kind of disagree with you. I think he's more like a guy who's retired and now he's really into bird watching, and he's going to be the most avid bird watcher in the world. Oh
no, I think that Fravor in the morning could just go, do you know what? I'm sick of talking about this, and that's it. He's gone. Like I'd say, but you've made me think of what your ideal witnesses to come forward are, and for me, if they were to bring forward 3 more witnesses, right? I'm gonna say this is 3 witnesses that if they had them in front of everyone talking about this shit, I'd just go, well, there's no way they're lying. Like they're so, and disregard their position in life.
Yeah.
what they're doing. Like obviously, these people aren't going to be people that are called forward or know about this stuff. But I'm just saying in terms of their demeanor, their character, who would actually, who you'd believe.
Yeah.
You know, I would say the three for me are Peter Andre.
Yeah.
Right? If they had him, I'd go, well, come on, he's not lying. Jason Donovan.
Jason Donovan, really? I'd say 70% of the audience don't even know who he is.
Are you serious? Jason Donovan.
And
from Neighbours.
Before we get into it, and a great Kylie song, but before we get into it, the third one.
Mr. Blobby.
Mr. Blobby, brilliant, fantastic.
No, but imagine Mr. Blobby comes out. Imagine this. Mr. Blobby comes out, and it's the first time ever he speaks words.
Alright, I'll give you that. If it was the first time he speaks words, that would be all over the news.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
But I think it would take a bit of explaining to the US audiences about what Mr. Blobby is and the cultural significance in the UK. That do you ever think him and the lad with the beard ever?
Got it on.
Yeah, he definitely, Noel definitely gets people women to dress up as Mr. Blobby.
Do you know what I'm picturing? Do you remember when is it Matt Hancock? Do you remember the CCTV footage of him having I think a few of those have happened, but nothing too crazy.
All right, just a little kiss before they're going home.
Yeah.
I think the ideal witnesses would actually be something like that. I think you're onto something, right? Maybe not those three witnesses. First guy, Peter Andre, maybe. Again, American audiences are going to be like, who the fuck is Peter Andre? But I think you're onto something. What's happening with them at the moment, what's so poor about their case, is they're just a bit boring.
Shut up.
They're nearly just a little bit, grey, and there's just nothing going on with them.
Dennis, they need this, right? Because people have had 20 years of humanity from ancient aliens.
But I'm telling you, that's what people have been brought up on. That's the problem. So until someone like that comes along and goes fucking aliens, man, no one's going to listen to this. They you know what they need? Genuinely, they need someone who
Axl Rose. Axl Rose.
Not Axl Rose. Why are you picking the worst people ever to come in?
These are just people that I think of if I'm being honest, they're people that I think there's no way there's no way they're able to stick to a script.
What about one Chuckle Brother?
The surviving Chuckle Brother, and he claims that the two of them had carried it. The two of them had carried one of the vehicles. I'd buy that. Next theory, Dennis. Right. Next theory is it's a psyop, misinformation campaign. Huge misinformation. Right. Now, what I would say is, of all times going, this hearing it's happened quite quickly in reality, considering how recently we heard about the whistleblowing. But I can't think of anything in the news that you could easily say, oh, this is distracting from something else.
So you don't think that this is a psyop just because it's not doing a good enough job?
Well, misinformation and psyop, I guess. There's two veins to that. So, the misinformation would be the idea of, they're bringing this out to kind of distract us, confuse us.
Yeah, but are they trying to confuse us about the subject, not just confuse us in general, right?
No, confuse us in general is more misinformation. So, you'd bring this out and you make a big deal about this when they're actually trying to, make it illegal to, have sex or something.
Yeah, which for some people it should be. But I think that... I don't believe the misinformation thing then if we're going on that definition. But I think in terms of a psyops to confuse the UFO debate and conversation, I think it could be a pretty good one. But it depends, is their goal going to be, okay, here we go, we're acknowledging that there's been these sightings, but they've come to nothing. Is that where you think it's going?
I think... The cynic in me is saying that's probably where I think it long term will go, but the other side of me thinks that we mentioned before in a previous episode Project Blue Book, this idea of the US government using this to do a soft disclosure to fake an alien invasion. to seize control of the world.
I mean, I'm not even joking, man. Maybe it's just because I've spent so much time doing this podcast, but like I get a little bit of a feeling in my stomach when we talk about this stuff, like that maybe aliens are on the way. Like, as in, usually I was quite safe talking about most of this stuff up until this year when they started coming out saying things. I'm like, this is really weird. Like, why these guys are? I mean, just to contemplate, if you can really, really contemplate it, like, if what they're saying is true, the whole thing.
It's mind blowing.
Like, I saw Brian Cox tweet about it, and he was saying, like, you know, kind of something along the lines of like, yeah, I'm looking at it, but maybe there's more important things to look at. But
fuck off.
You know, with our own world. But then he did say, like, it would actually be quite useful because it would, you know, turn our eyes towards being part of the universe rather than just part of the earth and whatever.
Well, here's something for you, right? Here's something for you. I think the real reason why you have a knot in your stomach over all this stuff is you hate me being right.
No, it's not.
I'm telling you, you hate me being right.
We have to clear this up right on the podcast. Right? We have to clear this up right now. Okay? You think I get great enjoyment out of things that you do sometimes, right? Or not enjoyment. I swear.
You get misery from
misery. Yeah, sorry. You get enjoyment of misery. I don't in any way whatsoever. Right?
You'd hate if I was right about this.
But do you think I'd be thinking like this is?
I think they're coming down White House lawn, and there you are. You're for some reason you're in Washington, and you're going, that little bastard.
No, you're thinking this is the way it should be put. It's like the aliens come down, and you think I'm at home, not just thinking like, oh, the whole world is going to end, like, you know, and you're thinking at home, God, this is going to piss him off.
Yeah.
It's really going to piss him off.
The first thought in my head is, okay, mass sin, told you so. So the final thing, Denis, just before we close out there, is I think something that was brought up that I wanted to give a little bit of attention to is it's not really within the remit of this episode, but as to what the aliens are. Right, because in particular Grush was always careful to say he called them non-human intelligences. Yeah. So that leaves a lot of room. For me, I kept thinking, imagine if they actually just kept finding dogs that had been making these things. Like, you know, there's something else going on in there. But the non-human element, that leaves room for. He didn't want to say extraterrestrial because that does have a very specific meaning. So it left room for the idea of maybe these things have been around for before us, even like we mentioned in the UFO factory one, or something that he brought up was this idea. David Grush as well has a physics background. Is this idea of them potentially being multi-dimensional, and he specifically brings up a story that there had been kind of some knowledge about this in the UFO community. But of just what people described as military contractors seeing a football-sized object, football pitch-sized object that was always in like circled around, and they mentioned this, and they said that what the military contractors saw was as if it was a hologram of a red cube, and within it a solid grey sphere. And that it was and then I think when they said that when they went to investigate, it made aggressive movements. Yeah, just made a big grr. But the thing that's mind blowing about this is that the person asked, like, obviously that sounds bizarre. That sounds like something from Evangelion or something. But when you see the multi-dimensional element to it, David Grush mentions that one theoretical explanation is that you and I are 3D objects, and we cast 2D shadows.
Oh man, I read the Three Body Problem and all that series, and that stuff melted my head. And then the fourth dimension as well.
Yeah, so he said that these beings exist in the fourth dimension, and we're actually only seeing their shadows, and that's why they don't even seem comprehensible to us. That's why we have so much trouble.
Yeah.
Even figuring out what.
Why would we start seeing them now, though? Or
we've always been seing them.
All right, so we've seen them all through time.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Name a big event, and that was probably one of them.
My 21st.
Both. You know what? They're very similar.
3,000 people killed. Wait, I was going to say something else that people might question as well. Another thing they brought up and they answered quite definitively was they were like asking, well, why haven't commercial pilots like complained or brought forward all these things, right? And one of the things that they said was pretty self-explanatory, is these commercial planes are tied to pretty specific paths, and they also don't go on the same kind of ranges or altitudes as like a fighter jet would, and like basically they're just not in the same areas that these commercial planes would be. And then you could probably think as well that the aliens might just kind of say, look, well, we can identify what their flight paths are, let's just stay out of those commercial places.
Yeah, I think I think that there's also I think he also mentioned the fact that there's no clear reporting process. So there's not. It's not like there's an easy way for them to even report these things. So
yeah.
So I think just as we close out there, Dennis, like for me, I think watch this space. That's my big takeaway. I think that we need to know more before we can really close the book on what Rush actually knows.
I have a feeling that these episodes will be titled in some sort of way of part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 as we go along, because I think this is going to be going on for years, to be honest.
I think you could be right. I think that there is. Well, the first one we'll just do as it is.
Yeah.
And then what we'll do is we'll really fuck with people's heads when in a year's time we'll go part 2 and people go, oh, that's part 1.
Yeah.
But we will have gone back and we will have changed it then.
Or else we'll put in part 3 and there will be no part 2. All right, so that's it from the two alien boys here. It's a lovely evening outside. Roger is flicking cards around like Gambit. And is it? It's like his prison cell. It's like, what? I haven't been out in days. All right, yeah, but I'm Denis Len. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and anywhere else. Denis Len 3D, and over there you can find that lad.
At Roger O'Comedy on Instagram, or at Roger O'Sullivan on Twitter. And I guess on the back of that.
Oh wait,
Dennis?
before you do, we'll just tell them that we are going into the Den Files now for our Patreon supporters.
Oh yeah, and we'll be talking about some very interesting extra UFO stuff there. All there's left to say is love you, bye.